Before we get into my top 30 of 2024, here is the list of all my honorable mentions that just quite didn't make the cut. Now that we've gotten my honorable mentions out of the way, here is my final three-part breakdown of the top 30 horror films that I freaking loved in 2024. Kicking it off is Sebastian Vanecek's Infested, or Vermenes as it's known in France. Yeah, I've been pretty damn open about it. I do love me some creepy crawler horror. In particular, I do love me some spider horror. And while the Asylum has definitely provided in abundance with a bunch of campy fare, it was just nice to get a solid, creepy as fuck, standard poisonous spider thriller confined in one location. It's wicked, and I will tell you now, if you have arachnophobia, I dare you to watch this sucker. But the spider horror didn't stop there. We also got Sting, and while just as great as Infested, the one thing that actually does put Sting just a little bit above Infested, specifically for me, is the fact that Sting is actually a lot more fun to watch. While some characters are a tad cringe, a lot of them are actually a lot of fun to watch. It has a great sense of humor, really great atmosphere, and the creature effects revolving the titular Sting are amazing to watch. Both spider horror movies were excellent, but Sting is the one that I actually see myself watching more often. Humanist vampire seeking consenting... Is TikTok going to allow me to say that part of the title? Person. Yeah, this is a recent vampire film which is already entered into my favorite vampire films of all time. Definitely belongs in the same camp as vampire greats like Only Lovers Left Alive and Let the Right One In, even maybe a little touch of The Hunger. This is a utterly touching, utterly wonderful vampire dark comedy with a very poignant level of drama to it. This is just, especially in these troubled times where people are just looking for human connection, this movie really does a great job summing it up. It also has a little pangs of A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night as well. Speaking of movies about personal yearning, companionship, connection, and even just trying to figure out who you are in this mad whirl of a world, I saw The TV Glow. This is one that is oft debated as to whether or not it's horror, but personally to me, I think this is an utterly gorgeous horror film, one to which that takes the horror to an existential level, and definitely delves into the realm of abstract. But frankly, Jane Schoenbrun's film is ponderous, it's poetic, it's gorgeous, with two amazing lead performances by Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne. This is definitely a if it's your type of movie, but I say to me, it truly was my type of movie. I think we all can agree that it has been an incredible year for films with the themes of women fighting for their bodily autonomy and having it threaten to be taken away in one form or another, and just by wonderful coincidence they also happen to be films involving the Antichrist. In my honorable mentions, Apartment 7A was quite great. Another one is going to be popping on later on this list, but the first one that did it in the year was Immaculate, the surprise hit from Neon, and surprising in a lot of ways. First off, it is gorgeously made, definitely tackles the subject, the Antichrist concept, on a more scientific level, which I actually thought was quite delightful. Sydney Sweeney, this is actually the first film I've ever saw her in, and she really dominates this film. I mean, it's kind of a shame the film came out so early in the year because I don't see her getting awards consideration, which is a damn shame because she is fantastic, and the movie itself is also quite good. The ending didn't really wig me out like it did a lot of other people, but it still had edge, and I still loved it. In the tradition of alien abduction and all those TV specials that were all about finding Bigfoot, this is where we get Frogman. Frogman is a very spry little found footage film, one that actually delves into the world of cryptids, which, all things considered, you don't really get too often, and this one is an especially well-made one. One that which does a great job playing itself off as strictly, someone trying desperately to find closure to get some kind of vindication that this creature that haunted him as a child actually does exist. But the roads this movie goes down are roads that are pretty much worthy of a segment on the VHS series. It goes places that you are probably not prepared to go down. And because they go the found footage route, especially filming it on VHS cameras, there is a level of realism that I was not expecting. So this is an especially wild film. I really dug the hell out of this. If you definitely love found footage, and if you love talks about cryptids, this is one you need to give a go. One thing you all may not know about me is that I myself am an agnostic, meaning, of course, that I do believe in the idea that there's something grand going on in the scheme of the universe, but I do not believe that any religion on this earth has been able to knock it yet. So, yeah, Heretic was my crack. This movie just engaged with me from the dead beginning. And for a lot of people who aren't crazy about horror, where it's all dialogue based, not me. This is a movie that every single line in this movie was just utter gold. I was transfixed by all the characters involved. Hugh Grant gives a latter-day career-defining performance, which is just staggering. But you also got Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, who are equally pulling their weight. This is a film that to me was never boring and was always consistently engaging. I loved every minute of this sucker, and if you yourself always have any kind of personal crises of faith, or just want to discuss a film that discusses in depth the ideas, or even in some cases the hypocrisies of religion, Heretic is a big one that you need to look at now. Well, naturally, Nosferatu is the big one that everyone's talking about right now, and for good reason, but another vampire movie that I urge everyone to not sleep on, it is The Vordelak. This is a amazing, elegant, very unique vampire film that came out of France, one set in a very specific period, and also one that does its own thing, not just with the lore of vampires, and even a regionally unique take on the vampires, but also just in level of presentation, doing something especially eerie and very unsettling with the titular Vordelak. It is a film that I was just hypnotized by from start to finish, just simply because I had never seen anything do what a traditional horror archetype in this way. It's one that, honestly, I just loved every minute of this sucker. If you have not heard of this, if you've not seen it yet, please. This is another jet. France had a good year, and this is one of the reasons why. Meanwhile, Tubi. Yeah, Tubi. Even they have themselves a couple of gems this year within the horror field, and one in particular is Lowlifes. This is a film that lulls you into a false sense of security, thinking it's going to be one type of horror movie, but my God, very early on it changes on a dime, and it becomes something far more sinister, and actually having something far more scathing to say about society nowadays. This film is one that pretty much will play with any sort of preconception you have about types of horror films of this particular ilk. It is a lot of fun, and one that just consistently had me going, oh, okay, what are we doing now? You're going to be asking that a lot as well. Melissa Barrera had a pretty shit year. Fuck you, Skydance. But that didn't stop her from churning out some pretty damn good horror movies this year. But the one that really went under the radar was Your Monster. This film was a thorough delight from start to finish. This one, first off, it is exceptionally funny. Melissa Barrera really churns out a against type performance in this one, but simultaneously plays to a lot of the strengths to which we know her for. But the real charm of this movie really does come from the fact that it is probably the most unconventional romance that you could ever come across. Now, I can't say too much without spoiling, but it is a wonderful film. And I will say this also, Tommy Dewey, who also delivered a great performance in Saturday Night, really delivers the goods in this one. Excellent movie. Love it. Gotta watch it. Oh yeah, speaking of Melissa Barrera in underrated horror films this year, Abigail. Oh yeah. I personally, to me, I've already seen it. Abigail is becoming yet another great horror icon that came out of this year. I'm already seeing cosplay from it, and which is impressive considering tragically the movie didn't do well financially. But Radio Silence really brought out the fun with an incredibly game cast, all led by a wicked, demented, sinister, and even a little mischievous performance by Alicia Weir as the titular Abigail. Now, for those of you saying like, "Well, I would have liked it better if the trailers didn't give away it's a vampire movie," it's a vampire movie. What else are they supposed to advertise? And here's the thing: they reveal that at a key point early in the film. Guess what? There's more shit going on in this movie that you don't know. So watch it. It's fun, it's wild, it's a blast. Also, Kevin Durant is kind of adorable. Vampires just kept coming this year, and the other one that Tubi came out with, which to me was an utter gem, was Slay, or as I also jokingly call it, From Drag Till Dawn. This film is the hybrid of From Dusk Till Dawn meets Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, that I did not know I wanted, and I am so happy to have it. Apart from the fact that it really takes the premise and plays it up to its peak potential, you do have a wonderful cross-section of lovely drag queens who really take the stage. But the other thing that really surprised me about this film is that the script is exceptionally spry, and beyond our four leads, we also have a great supporting cast, each of them with their own interesting and honestly very unpredictable story arcs that lead to an incredibly satisfying conclusion. It's on Tubi. If you have not seen this, and if you love drag like I do, and if you love, well, let's face it, if you watch Dragula like I do, you know, you should be loving drag. And if you love vampires, watch Slay. Diablo Cody came back to the horror genre and made a film which, unfortunately, much like her previous one, underperformed and didn't get the critical applause that it should have. But unlike her previous one, is actually getting a cult following pretty damn fast. Lisa Frankenstein is the wonderful hybrid of Heathers meets Frankenhooker, which just seems right. And I will also add Zelda Williams' direction is just pitch perfect. Everything about this one, I've watched this film so many times this year, it makes me giggle every time, and it has one of the most dementedly adorable romances between Katherine Newton and Cole Sprouse. Cole Sprouse in particular actually gives a pantomime performance which almost rivals David Howard Thornton. While Frankie Frico was another very delightful exercise in classic retro kitsch with weird-ass Muppets, the one that also takes my award for first great horror film of the year is Destroy All Neighbors. Jonah Ray stars as an aspiring prog rock musician who ends up having some very odd life events occur involving his obnoxious roommate, played unrecognizably by Alex Winter. This is one that just goes hard with the crazy prosthetics, the wild camera work, and just a great kind of nasty rock star attitude to it. Honestly, the beautiful thing about having Alex Winter in this movie is that, frankly, this is kind of like the offspring of his masterpiece Freaked. So if you loved Freaked, then honestly Destroy All Neighbors is entirely your jam. While I admit I wasn't as passionately, madly in love with it as a lot of other people were, which I'm really happy for, especially for Robert Eggers, Nosferatu, I'm still not going to deny, is a beautiful, passionately made horror film, and the one thing I can always count on with Robert Eggers is that he's never going to sleepwalk through anything. Every single bit of his passion for filmmaking is writ large wide on the screen, and even with me not being as emotionally invested in the film, I'm still not going to deny this is a fucking amazing film, which in all likelihood I'm going to probably watch this version over the silent film any day, and even then it's still a great tribute to that classic. And even more so, it even kind of fleshes out a lot of ideas that were kind of done in the original, but obviously they weren't able to do to the fullest extent. Here they take it a whole lot further, and as an extra special nod, Lily Rose Depp, staggering performance in here. Again, another actress who this is my first time ever seeing them. I hope they get all the gigs. It's been kind of a rocky road for the Alien franchise. Now, I won't say that Alien Romulus is the smooth light after at the end of the tunnel, but I will say it's definitely one that that smoothed the road just a bit, and a lot of it really has to be given to Fede Alvarez and his great sensibilities as a horror filmmaker, to the point where he, in my opinion, brought the franchise back to its horror roots. And this is, I will say, the scariest Alien film since the first two. He does so many cool, wild, gnarly ass things with the xenomorphs that you'd never think that there'd be anything new to do with them, but man, does he do some wild shit with them. And also I gotta add David Johnson and also Kaylee Spaney deliver some great lead performances in this one, and they are very engaging characters, and they, with levels that you don't expect the movie to explore, and it all culminates, and even elements that you think are kind of going to be kind of forced, especially stuff Ridley Scott obviously insisted on, actually fit pretty well here. So this, it really is the best damn Alien movie we've had in years now. Whether or not that's saying something, that'll depend. Ask other people. Me, fucking loved it. Dave Dastmalchian absolutely shines in Late Night with the Devil, and while his performance is definitely the key reason I recommend everyone to watch it, I'm also going to add it's worth watching just by virtue of the fact that it is a incredible, highly detailed, nostalgic romp into the world of late night talk shows of the 1970s. And what's even more entertaining about this is that this one emulated some. Most people would say, yeah, we'll talk about, they'll pay tribute to Carson or any of the big boys, but this one actually opted to kind of focus on the lesser people like, Dick Cavett or even some people from out in Australia. And because of that, the film has a great intimate style to it and does a great spin on the found footage genre in a way that refreshingly has not been done before. And honestly, yeah, there's debates about that. Just go watch my original review. I have opinions on that level. None of that deters me from proclaiming that Late Night with the Devil is one of the most entertaining horror films of the year. One so much so that I could watch this one like crazy. Even Joe Bob showed it recently with Dastmalchian in attendance. It's just, I can't say much more. It's a hell of a good time. Oh, that was awful. Naturally, would have been all kinds of wrong if I did not involve my girl Maxine on this list. Now, while, yeah, it doesn't hit the heights of the predecessors X and Pearl, there is no denying for me that Maxine is a solid trilogy ender that does a great job, especially when you watch them all back to back to back. Maxine really does bring home a lot of the themes that are talked about in the beginning, and I even love that they don't fixate on Maxine being like a hero in any form. I like the idea that Maxine is still someone with a lot of morally gray areas who has their own agenda, who will do whatever they take to succeed, and I like that the movie takes it that route, and I like how it builds on the themes of the first two films. So yeah, on its own, it's a little wobbly, but when it comes to it being a trilogy ender, it sticks the landing. The Devil's Bath may very well be the scariest film I saw this year, but not for the reasons you think. And again, there's a movie that people are debating whether or not it's actually right to consider it horror. To me, it truly is, especially when you take into account that it is meant to be a portrayal of life during a particular time period where basically if you did not abide by an insanely strict set of rules, you were pretty much a prisoner, you were ostracized, horrible things were done to people during this time period, to the point where people were resorted to some pretty damn horrific tactics in order to be released from their pain. It's haunting. It's the feel-bad movie of the year. Watch it if you dare. When Korea wants you to scream, goddamn do they want you to scream, and Exuma is a film to do that. This one was just one that snuck up on me out of the blue, but the second you tell me that it's a horror film from Korea, I'm definitely going to jump on it because, man, do they do horror their own way, and I'm always here for it. And this one is one that really does evolve in a spectacularly unconventional way. It starts off being one type of ghost story, but then it becomes possession, but then it becomes something grander. It's actually something more epic. And it all helps that you have the main characters portrayed here who are all very engaging and all very likable, and you really do give a shit about every single one of them, which really helps because the film runs at a very meaty runtime that definitely does require an investment of your time, but worth every freaking minute of it. Blink Twice is a film that seduces you and then goes in for the kill when you least expect it. This is a masterful directorial debut by Zoe Kravitz, and for extra measure we get a unexpectedly dark villain performance from Channing Tatum. Blink Twice is one of those films that had a disclaimer at the top of it, and honestly, I kind of see what they mean, because this film goes places, and even more so, I'm not going to tell you when, and I'm not even going to tell you how, I'm not even going to tell you what the context is, but when it goes there, it gets uncomfortable as fuck. Seldom it is that a filmmaker is able to make something where I legitimately feel evil interwoven within the fabric of the film, and Longlegs is a film that when I went to go see it both times in theaters, it did that. There was always this sense that there was something living, something alive in every frame of the film, and there was just a sinister presence that resonated all throughout. And even better is that it Trojan horses that paranormal angle into what you think is going to be just a clone of Silence of the Lambs, but with our very engaging main character Lee Harker, played with complete authority by Maika Monroe, we get something that becomes much more otherworldly, much more unnerving, and one that really does make me excited for what Osgood Perkins throws at me next. I cannot wait for the monkey. And yet, despite Maika Monroe's incredible performance in Longlegs, my favorite hero performance of the year actually goes to Hunter Schafer in Cuckoo. Directed by Tillman Singer, this is such an oddity of a film. It's one of those ones that's very eccentric. And it's a film that wears its eccentricity proudly on its sleeve, but underneath the weirdness of the film, the deliberate weirdness of the film, is yet another spectacular exploration about, not just about the forfeiture of a woman's autonomy, but also goes a lot deeper into it, and even a different route, specifically about the proprietorial attitudes certain people have towards people's children. It's one that really does explore it at a completely different angle, but at the center of it all is Hunter Schafer's character Gretchen, who has a very compelling and very twisty-turny arc, which really pulls her in multiple directions in terms of what she wants versus what she feels compelled to do in order to do the right thing. But she's always interesting, always engaging, and the movie on the whole is just a delightful little oddity. I have to also add, Dan Stevens, between this and Abigail, really had a freaking great year in horror. Oh, come on, did you honestly think I was going to ignore this guy? I'm sorry. But as Terrifier 2 really finally helped me solidify my love of Art the Clown and Damien Leone's Baby, but Terrifier 3, in my opinion, really secured Art the Clown's position as a horror icon. And even more so, it's a great freaking Christmas slasher. And Terrifier 2, I had a great time watching. Terrifier 3 is a tighter, meaner, and in many cases, more shocking film compared to its predecessor, but at the center of it all, apart from the fact that David Howard Thornton is again delivering 100% for his performance as Art the Clown, Lauren Rivera finds some exceptional new levels to her character, Sienna, and explores a level of trauma which I don't actually get a chance to see Final Girls get a chance to really explore as much as she does. And man, she pushes herself through the gamut. I mean, very seldomly do horror sequels really get a chance to show a horror heroine, a survivor, in their probably their most vulnerable state. But damn, Lauren Rivera brings it. And to see the hell that she goes through in this one compared to the first one, it really makes me excited to see where they go from here. And given the way this one ends, this one's kind of like Art Strikes Back. So it leaves me to wonder where we go from here. Fortunately, we don't have long to wait. But I'm sure people will agree with me that Oddity is one of the creepiest fucking movies that came out this year. From Damian McCarthy, the same guy who gave us Caveat, he brings that same magic to this film. Once again, using a setting to its peak potential, especially in terms of lighting, in terms of camera work. And one thing that he does really well, which he does even better here, is that he stages some sequences which are wholly uncomfortable, that actually tear you in different directions. It's one that the movie on the whole actually kind of feels like a classic EC Comics story, especially in terms of what goes on in it. But the film also, much like Caveat, uses incredible iconography that really burns itself into your subconscious. Not only is this such a creepy as fuck movie, but honestly, I had so much fun seeing this movie. I mean, the theater I was in was on its feet. Everyone had a great time on this, and it's one that if you have not seen it and you just want yourself a grand old classic style, I don't want to say what type of horror film it is, but it's definitely classic style. Give it a go, because honestly, I had a blast. Director Akasha Stevenson came in swinging for her directorial debut, and it was a prequel that, for a long dormant franchise, and she did stuff with it. She did stuff which kind of forces you to reevaluate your perception of the events of the first film. The First Omen, even with the forced upon little nods to the original, it still doesn't change the fact that this is still an intense as hell film that dares to do things that I'm pretty sure the big studio execs weren't expecting, but it did what it needed to in order to make this sucker stand out. Definitely with heavy influences on a lot of its peers, of course, Rosemary's Baby, but I would even say a lot of Andrzej Zulawski's Possession pokes its head in there. And even better, we get a wild and very committed performance by Nell Tiger Free in our lead role. Immaculate did this really, really well, but to me, I just love the first Omen way better than all the other movies about bodily autonomy and, of course, the Antichrist. This one took the top spot. Shudder had a lot of wins this year, and stop motion was one of the earliest ones. This one really does a fine job of exploring the downward spiral of a very put upon stop motion animator who is trying to get out of the shadow of under her mother, trying to find her own voice, but only to be beset on all sides by opportunistic people, unreliable friends, and even more so, just a sincere feeling of inadequacy. But the film really does showcase why stop motion is an incredible art form. In a post-Mad God world, this film really did a great job showcasing how kind of nerve-wracking the craft is, and why it's one that really does matter when it comes to a commitment, when it comes to your time, and even when it comes to your fractured psyche. It's haunting, it's wild, the imagery is unparalleled. I strongly recommend it. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Shudder really had a freaking great one this year, and they even had one that almost rivals Art the Clown in terms of brutality. But the real reason I love In a Violent Nature, why I fucking consider this one of the best of the year, is because this isn't a... People keep saying like, oh, it's from the killer's point of view. No. This is a nature documentary. That's why the camera keeps following him. That's why it focuses on every single movement the killer makes. It is a film that is all about just watching a predator in their natural habitat doing their thing. And that, when I thought about that, it actually even made the final scene make a world of sense, because that's what this movie is about. That's what the title is about. It is about pure and simple watching a predator in their own habitat, and pretty much summing up the idea that, yeah, nature is a pretty dangerous and violent place, and you never know what's in there, and you don't want to fuck with it. And man, do you not want to fuck with Johnny. As for my number one, you know what? I'm going to be silly. If you want to find out my number one, just go to my podcast, What's in the Podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, and look up the episode, the 2024 Belial Awards, where me and my friend Matt Konopka will go through our favorites of the year. But even more so, we're going to give awards to a lot of titles, even some that aren't even mentioned on my list, some on his. It is a 2.5-hour wild ride where we just revel in how great 2024 was as a year. So check that out right there to find out my number one. And yes, fuck Trump, and hopefully I'll see you right when the right starts. Fuck that guy.